Welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight we're nearing 200 interviews, believe it or not, for Tucker Carlson today over on Fox Nation. These are extended and very wide-ranging interviews with people who'd never have time to sit down on a regular nightly show here on Fox. That includes some of the most prominent entertainers, authors, thinkers, and generally interesting, entertaining people of our time. You may have seen a couple of minutes of these interviews because we broadcast them at night sometimes. But on this show this evening, we're focusing on just two people. The first is football legend Brett Favre, and the second is Hollywood actor Jon Voight. And we're bringing you two extended portions right now so you can get a sense of what our Fox Nation show is all about. Here is part one of our conversation with Brett Favre. Who was your dad? What was he like?
Well, as I explained to you last night, if you're familiar with Gomer Pyle, and our generation or older certainly is familiar with Gomer Pyle, Sergeant Carter, who yelled, had a flat top, was constantly, everything he said was yelling, even when he was polite and speaking softly. That was my dad. He was my baseball coach. He coached American Legion baseball for 35, 40 years. And he coached high school football for about 35 years. And so me and my two brothers, we grew up playing, being coached by him, even when he was not officially our coach. There was a lot of hard work, a lot of spankings, yellings, but that was the way we grew up. You know, my dad, like I said, he was coaching high school football since I was a little kid.
So when you screwed up, he didn't make excuses for you?
He never felt sorry for me. No. I was probably treated the worst on the whole team. And I, you know, strangely, I got that. I didn't particularly like it, but I got it. You know, the things that he said to me, and I think sometimes, don't get me wrong, and I think I told you the story last night, had he and I been riding back from a practice home one evening, and my dad's driving right here, and we had a little small pickup truck, and had he looked over to me and said, "Son, how you doing in school? Everything, you and Deanna okay?" I would have thought that he had lost his mind. That was just not his nature. When I did, and another example, so while I'm in Green Bay, especially 3 or 4 years in when I really was playing exceptionally well, he would come to games, and after the game, he'd ride to the game with me in my truck, and he would ride back home after the game with me in my truck, and he would critique the way I played. Now, ooh. My dad was not really a technician from a coach's perspective. It was more just work hard, be tough, be a great teammate. That was kind of his three things. It wasn't like, all right, we're going to scheme them to death. He was not a schemer. He was just, we ran the football. And when I'm going way back to where the younger generation doesn't even know what the wishbone is. You know, wishbone was prolific back when Barry Switzer and Osborne were doing it back in those days.
For those who don't know, what is the wishbone?
It's a quarterback's under center. You have a fullback, you have a halfback and a halfback, and you run misdirection options. I would say if you had 70 plays in a game, 68 of them are runs. Some type of veer option, you know, I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But that's what we ran. So I say that because when my dad would critique me, for example, maybe I was 28 for 32 in the game, which is great. 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, maybe an interception, maybe no interceptions. Dad would get in the truck, and rather than say, "Well, I'm proud of you, you did really a good job," he would say, "You know, you could have completed those other 4 passes." And I would say, "Dad, don't even think about trying to critique me. For a man who wouldn't throw a pass or allow his son to throw a pass, you're going to tell me how I should throw? or what I should have done better, and he'd get all bent out of shape. But I thought I had a fair argument.
So you had to be able to take criticism.
Yeah. Certainly from him is where it started. So like, I've had some great coaches after him, and the really good coaches will get on your ass a little bit.
Yeah.
No matter who you are. And that's okay. Did I particularly like it? No, but I understood that was part of the process and needed to be done. And I've even had coaches say, look, I'm going to chew your ass a little bit, but I want the other guys to know that you're no different than anybody else on the team. And I'm all in on that. That's fine. But that started with my dad.
You told me a story last night about being a kid riding your bike with your brother. Would you mind repeating that story? So
my wife loves this story. So me and my brother, my older brother Scott, were 2 years apart. I'm guessing he was 12, say I'm 9 or 10. So we lived on a half a mile dirt road, one way in, one way out. No neighbors anywhere remotely close, several miles away. So for whatever reason, we didn't ride bikes a lot, but this one particular day we were riding down the gravel road, and I got if you rode bikes as a kid, you probably got your pants leg caught in the chain at some point. So I got my pants leg caught in the chain, and it kind of wrapped up pretty good. And so we're trying to get it out, me and my brother Scott. So my dad comes driving down the road from home, going out. You could hear the truck coming, you see the dust, and he stops. And I was telling you the truth. The passenger window, there was no passenger window, and the door was held shut or somewhat shut with an extension cord. So he pulls up, he looks out the window, and he says, "What are y'all doing?" So we're riding bikes. My pants leg got caught in the chain. Will you help me get it out? Oh, hell, I ain't got time for that. So he takes off. He gets about 50 to 100 yards down the road, and I do that. And all of a sudden, brake lights. You see the brake lights, and you see the truck stopping, gravel's flying, and he hits it in reverse and starts coming back. And my brother Scott says, "You better run." Well, keep in mind, I got my pants leg caught in the chain, and I'm not running anywhere, so I'm trying to hop into the woods. Needless to say, it was the last time I flipped anyone off for a long time. And this is the God's honest truth. I told my dad that I only did that because I saw people do it when they were mad at other people. He didn't buy it.
Like you didn't even know what it meant.
I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that people did it when they were pissed. So it was quite a bit longer before I ever did that again. But that was my dad. He was, again, if he would have, there was very little compassion. And if my dad would have said to me, "Son, I love you," I would have thought, "Dad, are you okay? You got fever?" But I knew he loved me in his weird sort of way.
When he died, famously, suddenly, you played one of the best games of your life the next day.
I would say it was the best game. Statistically speaking, I don't think anyone can argue, just first half alone. When I left the game after 20 years, and I don't say this braggingly, I had every passing record, good and bad, that you could possibly own. Now, since they've all been passed. But I say that only because only once in my career, I think once, maybe twice, did I throw for 400 yards ever. Now, guys do it all the time. Now, at one time, I had the yardage passing record, but it wasn't because I was throwing for 400 and 500 yards a game. At halftime of this game, I had 399 yards. Guys do it all the time now. But for me, in the way I played, that was nothing short of a miracle. And 4 touchdowns at the end of the first half. So I could have ended the game right there with better statistics than I'd had in any other full game in my career.
The day after your father died?
The day after.
How'd you do that?
Well, it was the hardest thing that I ever had to do. There was a lot of talk prior to the game on whether or not I would play, speculation. Meanwhile, at the hotel in Oakland, I knew I was going to play because that's what my dad would have wanted me to do. And the people who knew my dad and the way that he carried himself all understood. Like, you better play in that game. I mean, I could just hear him. Don't you sit out for this. The hard part to me was not playing in the game, but playing well enough to honor my father in my mind. And that was exceptionally hard because it was hard to focus on the job at hand. It was the second to the last regular season game. We had to win the game to continue our playoff possibilities. We had to win that game and, quite frankly, win the next game and hope for a loss by another team to get in. So we needed to win. And I knew that my teammates were counting on me. But I kind of lost track of the game plan for obvious reasons. So there was a lot going on, and the least of which was scheming and game plan issues. So the pressure to perform that I had placed upon myself was like, and I played in 2 Super Bowls, played in Pro Bowls, played in a lot of big games. But the pressure to perform at the level that I ended up performing at was almost unreachable. But yet it you know, and I said this on the field after, I said, you know, divine intervention, if there ever was a, you know, an example of it in football, it was the way I played in this game. There's no question about it.
Did you say a prayer beforehand?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Almost as surprising to me is that, like a lot of professional athletes, that you got handed a bunch of pain pills, you became dependent on them. But even as you're going through that, you continue to win. How'd you do that?
I have no idea. And I won 3 MVPs, 94, 95, 96, or in that span, 95, 96, 97, I'm not sure. And it was in the right in the middle of my drug addiction. It all started, we were playing Philadelphia and Milwaukee in 94. And Reggie White, who became a teammate of mine the following year, slammed me to the ground, separated my shoulder. And, you know, sometimes you'll watch a game and you go, that hit's got to hurt really bad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Then the others, you go, I can't believe he's not getting up from that. This one in particular that Reggie, it was like every force that he had along with his weight drove my shoulder, and I wanted to keep playing. So I had to get it injected at halftime to keep playing. Played the second half, played okay, we won the game. I was given 2 pain pills after the game for the ride back from Milwaukee to Green Bay, hour-and-a-half drive. And it worked. I didn't feel the shoulder. I felt more kind of fuzziness than I did pain. So I kind of liked it. And it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. So I found the most minor injuries kind of provoked me into asking for pills. And that happened more and more. I sprained my ankle. I can still play, but I need some pills. And it just got worse and worse. And as you know, you take so many for so long, then those are not good enough. And you have to add 1 or 2 more. And then so at my worst, I was taking 16 Vicodin and ES at just a handful at one time. And,
damn.
You know, and we talked about it some last night. I knew it was a problem. You know, I knew it was a problem way before that. But, you know, it was to a point where I would throw up. I would have a gag reflex. I got to a point where so many pills, I'd throw them back up, and I would pick the pills out of the vomit and swallow them again. Now, I certainly knew that that was a problem.
Did people around you know?
I thought no.
Right.
You know, I think when you're kind of in the midst of the addiction, whatever that may be, you think you're the only one who knows. You've got it all figured out. When in fact, everyone knows, and they're trying to figure out how best to approach you or how to handle this. And that was the case with me. My wife was not all, because she didn't want to give it away, but she was flushing pills down from time to time, making my job harder to try to find these pills.
Yeah.
But obviously, she had my best interests in mind. But, meanwhile, as I'm playing, I'm taking these pills. I took them every night, no matter what. I had 2 seizures, one during the season, one after a routine ankle surgery after the 95 season. And that the second one, they were not that far apart. It really was kind of okay, we got to do something. And that really kick-started going to treatment and getting some help. But, I was one that was thinking, well, I'm playing my best football. It can't be that bad. That was the reasoning I had within myself. I knew it was wrong, but I was playing exceptionally well. So I was justifying my actions because it can't be too bad. I'm playing
Well,
great.
it's kind of a fair point. I mean, I'm not, opioid addiction is the worst thing imaginable, but most people get really passive and out of it, and you're winning the Super Bowl. How did you do that?
I think there's some, what got me to where I was at that point, from a professional perspective, also got me in the addictive cycle that I was in. That I'm all or nothing. And so I was sort of all on those 2 fronts. Football, so I was devoted to my team, but I was also devoted to the pill or pills. That got to a point where had I continued it much longer, the seizure, rather than coming back and being fine after a seizure, maybe I never wake up from it.
Yeah.
16 Vicodin ES for anyone will kill you. No question about it. So I'm just fortunate that I quit as quickly as it started.
Did it affect your game when you got off them?
No, not really. For about a month or 2, I have to admit, I had cold sweats. I shook. I took my last pill in the off season, thank goodness. I flushed like 6 down the toilet and almost went back in after them. But 6 wasn't enough. That's the problem when you're in this addiction cycle. You know what you need, and that becomes really hard. The more you elevate how many you take, that becomes harder to get. And it becomes, you're consumed every day by taking those pills and getting those pills. So when I quit, I didn't even think about, I went to treatment 3 times. I think most people that are familiar with me know of one for sure, the 73-day stint prior to the Super Bowl. I went prior to that for 28 days in Louisiana, and then I went back for 28 days after the 73 days, so a year later. And I learned, each time I learned a lot more, and I also learned don't ever quit on your own cold turkey, which is what I did, because it can kill you. Fortunately, I survived it. But for 2 months, I struggled with cold sweats, shook a bunch, had, night sweats. But eventually I got over it.
Damn. You started on this addiction because you got an injury.
Correct.
To your shoulder because you got hit so hard. Who are the scariest people you played against? Were there ever people on the field you thought, I don't want them near me?
Well, first and foremost would have to be Reggie White, the guy who hurt me.
Yeah.
Later joined me as a teammate, thank goodness. One of the nicest, biggest teddy bear you would ever meet, but was ferocious. Didn't talk smack, was a preacher, one of the nicest guys, funny, and could impersonate anyone, but just, you couldn't block him. And he wasn't out to hurt you. He just played within the game, confines of the game. But he was I think at his peak, he was probably 330, ran like a deer, hit like a Mack truck. I know firsthand. So he was the first. Then I was so thankful when he joined our team. But then the many battles I had with Warren Sapp. Now, I wasn't blocking him. He was chasing me with Tampa Bay. Great player. One of the greatest trash talkers in history. But
what makes a good trash talker?
Well, I'll give you an example of Warren. So when Warren was drafted, he was in a class, a great class. John Lynch, Rondé Barber, Derek Brooks, all these great guys, Hall of Fame guys. But they were kind of young, so we were kind of beating up on them a little bit, but you could tell they were going to be good. So like every pass, even completed successful passes I threw, Warren Sapp would hit me. Either right before I threw, right after I threw, or way after I threw.
Just on principle?
Just because he could. And so I would be getting up, and he'd start, I'm going to be on you, I'm kicking your ass all day for, kicking your ass all day for. I said, Warren, look at the scoreboard. 28-7, we're winning. I don't give a damn. I'm kicking your ass all day, and that's all that matters. That's the kind of guy Warren Sapp was. You know, he wanted to win, and they started winning a lot of games, but he was relentless. He was going to let you know that he was close, or he's hitting you, or he was going to continue to do what he's been doing the rest of the game, regardless of what the score was. And you were like, I'd tell my guys, I'm like, just block him, trip him, grab him, choke him, do whatever you got to do. And they go, well, we can't block him. And that was the type of player, and he knew it. So, you know, that was, but when you beat him, you knew you did something well, because I mean, he gave you his best for 70, whatever, the average game was 75 defense, 75 offense, 15 special team plays. He gave you everything he had, every play.
Did you ever talk to him off the field?
We've become friends after, believe it or not. If you'd have told me, like, while we were one of those games where we were jawing back and forth, you said, hey, that guy, you're going to be friends with him someday. You're going to actually laugh about these moments. I'd have said, you're crazier than hell.
So when you get out of bed in the morning at 52 and your back hurts and your hip hurts, do you think of him?
You know, surprisingly, I don't. But what I do, I think of just the 20 years kind of just flashes before, you know, how long it took, but how quickly I can just scan through and the Rolodex of what I thought was me being John Wayne is now resulting in me being, you know, like a pincushion. I feel every sack and hit that I think I've
Sunday.
Welcome to Fox News Live. I'm Kevin Corke in Washington. White House Economic Advisor Brian Deese facing major backlash for suggesting that high gas prices are worth it for the, quote, future of the liberal world order. Deese making those comments on CNN when he was asked to respond to President Biden's assessment that Americans could expect to pay high gas prices until Vladimir Putin is defeated. Meantime, a Russian missile strike killing at least 21 people near the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. 30 people were also injured in that attack, which struck an apartment building and a campsite. Another semi-truck transporting immigrants has been found in San Antonio, Texas. This time, the 14 people inside were thankfully alive. Of course, earlier this week, 53 migrants died after being transported inside a sweltering hot truck. I'm Kevin Corke in Washington. Now back to more Tucker.
the game has changed tremendously in how they protect players, and I think that that's good. But I knew what I was getting into. That was my style of play. I fed off of the toughness and relished the opportunity to play hurt. Not that I wanted to be hurt, don't get me wrong, but like I broke my thumb on my throwing hand and played the next week. Now, if you'd have asked me prior to my career, of these injuries, which one would you think would keep you out the following week? Torn knee ligament, sprained ankle, separated shoulder, broken thumb on your throwing hand. I said broken thumb on my throwing hand, hands down, you can't throw. But yet I chose to try because that was kind of I felt like it was my DNA. And I ended up playing have the best 9-game stretch of my career with a splint on my throwing thumb. And I just kind of fed off of that. And the more I did it, the better I played. And not that my chest stuck out, but I just felt like the team never had to worry about that position because I was always going to be there. I was always going to be reliable, durable, tough, and a good leader. And there was a lot to be said for that. And I lived for that persona. Now at 52, I go, you should have taken a break a couple of times.
So it's funny because you think of, I'm no football expert, but you think of quarterbacks as like the most protected man on the field. Like, you can't let the quarterback get hurt.
Now, you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Whether you want to play that way or not, the game does not allow you to play that way. They're throwing flags. Even if you tried to run to get tackled, guys are going to shy away from hitting you. So you can't even, you can still get hit hard, don't get me wrong, but you have to try real hard to get hurt. And when I played, not that I tried to get hurt, but when you would hit me or hit me hard and I would feel it, to me, it was a challenge to see if I could get up quicker than the guy, pat him on the ass and tell him, hey, that was a good hit. That kind of had insult to injury. And now at 52, I'm saying, maybe you should have showed a little restraint.
So, but you said you did it in part because you were the leader of the team, the quarterback. You're the leader of the team. How important is it for the leader to show physical courage, durability, to play hurt?
Well, I think the quarterback position is so important. Some may say it's more important than any position on the field. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. A kicker misses a field goal at the end of the game, you tend to think that he was the most important person in it. So it's a matter of circumstances. But I think in general, overall, the quarterback is the one position that you really can't afford to not have someone good enough to play that position, but play week in and week out. And leadership obviously goes hand in hand with that. If you're out there, if you're at practice every day, you're showing up for games, and you got a torn hamstring or you got a bruised shoulder. We know that, but a lot is expected of you, Brett. We expect your best, even when you feel your worst. And that goes back to, for me, with the way I was raised. There wasn't much room for sissies in our household. Not much feeling sorry for each other. Believe me, I wanted some compassion every once in a while. But very, very little of it came our way. My mom would certainly pamper us some, but Dad would not. And that translated over to my professional career, that a lot of people are expecting you to be your best week in and week out. So live up to that.
Well, that was a good chunk of our conversation with Brett Favre. Hope you enjoyed it. Interesting guy. Up next, a discussion with legendary Hollywood actor Jon Voight. Straight ahead. In a city full of famous actors, Jon Voight is one of the most recognizable actors in all Hollywood. He's been famous for more than half a century, won an Academy Award. He's also out of step politically with the rest of his town. He's conservative, and we want to talk to him about that. But very quickly into our interview with Jon Voight, the conversation turned to his faith.
I think the biggest lesson that I learned to date has to do with God. I was raised Catholic.
Yes.
And I was a good Catholic boy.
So your parents were sincere Catholics?
My mother was devout. My dad didn't go to church much. He had a bad back, so it was hard for him to go to church anyway, to sit in a pew or for any length of time. But he was somebody who just had a wonderful attitude about life, and he was spiritual. He had his own spiritual way. He had his own individual way. He used to watch a fellow who reminds me of you. His name was Bishop Sheen. Did you ever see Bishop?
No.
Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen?
Yeah, famous guy.
Great guy. He's got that charisma you have, you see. And that's a real big compliment. I mean, you have a great charisma. And but he has that highly intelligent guy. He used to have this chalkboard, and he would go up and design these things weekly. He would have this show. And so far as I know, never referred to notes of any kind, and had this show perfectly blocked. You know, this is the old days when, and he would move around and they'd follow him with the big cameras, and he was so brilliant. But anyway, my father used to watch him all the time, and I think that's where he got his spiritual weekly lift, you see.
Did it rub off on you as a kid?
Well, it didn't really early on. I lost my way a little bit when I got older. My mother used to go to Mass every week, and sometimes in the middle of the week, too. And she never scolded us for not getting up and going to Mass as we grew. But she always was very devout. But I didn't have that connection I didn't feel that sense of God,
Yes.
I knew what right and wrong was, and up to a point before I overstepped the boundaries. But but there was a time in my life when I was really suffering, and then I experienced something that brought me to this understanding that I wasn't alone.
What happened?
Now, you want me to tell you?
I do.
I'm in trouble. No, you brought it up, John. Why did you bring it up if you didn't want to talk about it? Tucker Carlson got it out of me. Well,
I won't tell anyone.
Okay, no, you don't. Listen, I was in a lot of trouble at one point. Had a divorce, had some problems. And I was in this little house that I had. And I was really suffering for many reasons. My career was a little bit in flux at that time, and lots of things were going on. My relationship to my kids and wife and stuff. And I was on the floor. I found myself on the floor saying, "It's so difficult. It's so difficult." I said it out loud. And I heard in my ear, "It's supposed to be difficult." Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Like a separate voice telling you
Yes.
that.
It's supposed to be difficult. A voice of wisdom, kindness, clarity. I mean, it had so much resonance, this voice.
What a message. It's supposed to be difficult.
Can you imagine? I mean, this is it. And I will, boom, what? And I got up, and and I can tell you, Tucker, that moment in time, at that time I knew, I said, what it meant was, I'm not alone.
Yes.
Everything is known. Everything is known. I am known. That's what it meant to me. Whoa. This is...
Did you expect it? Were you calling out for God?
What? expected to knock me out. Now I have to proceed with my life, right? But I felt tremendous energy. It's somebody's rooting for me. It's like, don't give up. It's like, there's a purpose here. You've got some ways. You got a ways to go, son. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you might imagine it meant. Do you see? And I felt great. Whew. And so the next morning, and I'm not a person who really prays with the idea that anybody's listening up to that moment. Now I know we're covered, man. Everything we think, everything we say, everything. You're known. Like they say that God knows every bird that falls.
Yes.
This is us too, kids. We all are known. We're being observed and helped and loved. And we're expected to get up and, do battle, do something, do what's right, whatever it is, you see. There's a purpose here. And the purpose here is to learn our lessons and grow. And what's the big deal? To give to each other. To be here to be of help. I mean, this is what you figure out. But anyway, then at that moment, I was just interested in me surviving. And so the next morning I get up, I say, what do you got for me today? And I turn on the radio. And here's what came up. I swear, this is what happened when I turned the radio on. Having some fun. I'm having fun, you know what I mean? Because I'm not taking myself too seriously, but it's serious. I turn on the radio, it says, I'll build a stairway to paradise with a new step every day. What? It's another one. Wait a minute. I mean, what's going on here? Anyway, I had that kind of thing going on for several. If they know too much against what the current flavor is, of thought. But it's too bad. I've seen the schools been overtaken in my life. The teachers. There are no great teachers, it seems, anymore. There are, but boy, they're few and far between. The ones that are able to stand up to what's going on, and in our colleges, unbelievable. But of course, I know enough to know that this didn't happen accidentally. This didn't happen because a lot of people just got dulled. It happened because there were forces that wanted to propagandize, wanted to bring us around, wanted to attack America.
What a truly decent man. Not what you expect from Hollywood. We were so pleased by it. That's it for us tonight. We hope you enjoyed our special, as the interviews you just saw, and many more like them available right now on Fox Nation. You can get an account for free over at tuckercarlson.com. And of course, we'll be back every night, 8 p.m., the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Have a great night with the ones you love.